This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. How's it going, Joe?
Pretty good, man. Yeah, pretty solid.
Yeah.
What's going on your end?
Not a lot. I'll just let everybody know kind of what we're hitting today. This is not a CrossFit podcast. We don't do CrossFit. In all honesty, I talk poorly about CrossFit more than anything. And it has to do with like the programming and some of the methodology behind it. But a lot of it stems from just the organization itself. So having said that, we're not big into CrossFit. If you haven't seen the CrossFit Games this past weekend, there was a competitor, Lazar Dukic, who drowned in the CrossFit Games, who passed away. And I think that we need to talk about it. Like, I think we're going to talk about it, Joe and I, after we kind of get through some of the updates. And again, like I said, not a CrossFit podcast. And, but I know some of our listeners do CrossFit. They're into CrossFit. Some of them are still part of the community or pay attention to these things. But I think as someone who has a platform, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this event, this issue, in a hopes that, one, maybe you can go support Lazar's family. They have a GoFundMe right now. I think if you could, donate anything to them, perhaps, that would be helpful. That's, one reason I'm trying to bring some, shine a light on this just in our little corner of the world. But at the same time, just talking about how things could be different and should be different, and exposing like a huge weakness in the fitness community, which is, in all honesty, CrossFit HQ, and how things could be so much better, so much different. And like I said, this is my platform and something I want to talk about. If you're not into this, don't want to hear about it, cool, sign off right now. But we will be getting into that today. But before we do, we like to hit on some updates. Joe, how's your shoulder? Recovered? Are you good to go? How are you handling training right now?
Shoulder feels a lot better. I'm probably at 95%. I think, there's certain times where I'll move a certain way, elbow out, and I'll feel like maybe a little teeny tiny twinge of pain. I know there's, the anti-inflammatories are working, or whatever the lidocaine shot did was is doing good, but I'm basically just doing PT stuff for it. So I did a bunch of banded stuff earlier this week. I may do empty barbell presses tomorrow. Like, I'm really just going slow with it and just going through the range of motions, and just doing anything I can to use it to get blood flow there. But I'm not like doing strength building workouts for my shoulder. I'm just trying to get things moving again is basically it.
Nice, man.
But I do have a heel. Did you have any questions on my shoulder? Any else?
No, I'm waiting for you to tell me it's good to go and you're perfect. And that's what that's what I'm waiting for.
I don't think anything is going to be perfect.
It's just like, as we get older, it's just like what's hurt this week? It's like a pinky in the brain. It's like,
yeah,
what are we going to do this week, Joe? What's injured this week, Joe?
Yeah, exactly. I need to have like a running sheet or like a tracker, body parts that are lighting up red. So my heel, I finally got the appointment with the ortho here on base. So they got x-rays done a couple weeks ago, and I have a fairly significant size bone spur that has grown on the back of my heel. So basically, when there's enough tension and pulling at how it's kind of explained to me on the tendon,
that you've had for years, like you've always had Achilles stuff, right? Like,
yeah, so I've had tendonitis in my Achilles since I hit puberty, like, because I grew too fast. My tendons just didn't keep up. So the Achilles a bunch of times. So the with the constant pulling with the tendon, I guess it starts to calcify on the bone and creates a spur, and then that starts to rub against the tendon. It becomes painful. So I've been dealing with that for about a year. seen 2 different PTs. It's finally started to get better the last couple of months, like to where I don't really have much pain at all, but I still wanted to get a check out. So I have a spur, and I met with the ortho, and he ran through me the list of options of what to do. And I thought when I did a first like cursory Google search on spur and like surgery, there's sometimes most of what came up was like, oh, it's a pretty easy surgery. It just has, a couple week recovery kind of thing. You'll be kind of fine. But it's all about the location of where it's at. My spur is right where the Achilles attaches to the heel. And the surgeon was like, because of where mine is at and because of the size of it or whatever, they would have to detach my Achilles to remove the spur and reattach it. And I was like, nope, that's not happening. And he didn't advise this. He was just like, the most extreme case would be this. But what I am going to do, and the kind of what he was either the most okay with, was a PRP, so platelet rich plasma injection.
Yeah.
So basically they take a couple of vials of my blood, spin it up, take the plasma out of it, and then inject it directly into the site to where it's happening, to help speed that recovery and just like supercharge the recovery there. So that's like a 1 to 2 week recovery thing. The doctor and both, Google, just searching around, not sure if I'll be in a boot for like a week just to keep it like as much undisturbed as possible, because how I understand it, it creates such an inflammatory response. Like I can't take anti-inflammatories for 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after, because it's the inflammatory response that we want. So I can't do that. Which is fine. I don't really take those anyway. And so I just have to keep it, take it easy for, 2 weeks after, probably no running, nothing crazy. The boot, I'm hoping I don't have to wear. I'd rather not wear a boot just because it's kind of annoying. I'll probably just end up going by feel and just not pushing it at all. But hey, if there's anybody who's had one of these, or PTs or people out there that have some insight, just you can throw my way. It's not for another 2 weeks, so I still have time to like. I told him I'll look into it more to see if I still want to do it, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like a low risk kind of thing.
No, it's fine, man. In all honesty, I'll connect you after the podcast. I know at least maybe half a dozen people who've done PRP injections. So, but yeah, I think it'd be good. But what you're saying, like, that's the big deal, is like some people try to get back at it too fast after PRP injection, and that kind of screwed things up from my understanding of. I'm no expert in this. So it sounds like you're on the right track, but yeah, I can hook you up with some people who've done it.
Cool. Yeah. I'm in no rush. Just like with my shoulder, like I'm not planning on doing anything crazy at first anyway. So if I have to rest from running for a couple of weeks, then that's fine. I've got a bike.
Cool. I'm interested to hear more about PRP and how it works for you. I've kind of all the friends I've had, kind of mixed results, but sometimes I feel like the people who like say it didn't work are the people who didn't listen, to like the recovery process. And like, so I don't know if it's which one it is, but I know we probably have an army of physical therapists listening to this who are probably going to reach out to Joe, just shoot him an Instagram message and be like, hey, here's what you need to know.
Even shoot it to our support, because I monitor that anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot update wise. Training for this High Rocks. Just trying to get running in. I kind of talked all about all that last week, so I'm not going to hash all that out. But one thing I did want to update: my kids are back in school as of today, as of this recording. So that concluded summer training. But I wanted to talk about some of their results. I'm only going to talk about my kids' results, no one else's kids that I trained, my friend or my kids' friends. But I'm just really proud of them, and I want to talk about like some of their results across 4 tests. We did more than this, but I'm going to talk about these 4 tests. So I had them do 1 minute of push-ups, 1 minute of sit-ups, 1 minute of squats, 800-meter run as their baseline test. So William and Graham, in 1 minute of these are hand release push-ups, by the way. So clarification, hand release push-ups on the push-ups and ab mat sit-ups on the sit-ups. So just so we're clear on the standards that I had for them. Squats were squats, but they had to go all the way down every single time. And 800-meter run is 800-meter run. So anyway, 1 minute of push-ups at the start of summer. William and Graham both did 25 reps of hand release push-ups in 1 minute. And then 1 minute of sit-ups. William did 33 reps and Graham did 31 reps. And then 1 minute of squats, 47 reps for William, 53 reps for Graham. And William ran a half mile in 5:10 and Graham ran a half mile in 4:38. So 800 meters. At the end of summer, 1 minute of push-ups, William went from 25 to 45 reps in a minute, hand release push-ups. Graham went from 25 reps to 44 reps in a minute. So William edged him out 1 rep there. 1 minute of sit-ups. William went from 33 reps to 44 reps. Graham went from 31 reps to 41 reps. And then squats, William went from 47 reps to 62 reps in a minute. These are not like do as many as you can do. These are time capped at a minute.
Yeah.
And then Graham went from 53 reps in a minute, which is already a lot, to 70 reps in 1 minute. So more than 1 squat per second, which is crazy. I was like, dude, I don't know if I could beat you. And then, but no, I totally could. 800 meter run. William went from 5:10 to 3:58.
Good God.
And Graham went from 4:38 to 3:40. In all honesty, when he finished, I was like, you could have ran faster. Like, you could have gone faster. So, I mean, getting close to, like, I know the Air Force test is a 1.5 mile run, but like they're getting close to passing like an adult male Air Force PT test with some of these things. And I only trained them for, what is that, 2.5 months, whatever summer is. So just really crazy, really crazy. I'm super proud of their results, but I wanted to share that because I talked about how I was training them at the beginning, and then we got to the end and they were super like amped up with their results and super legit. And now they're in so many sports. I'm not going to be training them as much throughout the year, probably just 1 session a week, trying to maintain some of this going forward. But it was pretty awesome. And then I think I'll just continue to train them during all breaks, like Christmas break. We're not going to sit on our butts and do nothing, train 2 or 3 days a week. So anyway, that's my proud dad moment, but also related to fitness. So they're crushing it, doing awesome stuff.
The run improvement's craziest to me. I mean, you kind of expect the push-ups and sit-ups like to get some more out once you're doing some sort of strength, but the run, like that's usually takes longer to improve that much.
Yeah, and I honestly think because William could not have gone any faster. Like that, just when you're watching someone, because we're doing on the treadmill, I'm like, that was it. You did it. Like you maxed out your run there. Graham finished and was like, I'm okay. But like the hardest thing for me to teach them has been pacing. It's so hard to explain, because like when you say, hey, we're doing a max effort test for your 800 meter right now, they're like, fast as I can. Like, well, no, because if you go 100 meter fast, that you're going to get burned out, then you're not going to be able to do the rest. And they're like, okay, so pace it. But then they start they overpace. And that's been the hardest thing for me to teach them is like learning their body and how to pace something like that run, especially if we get further into like a mile or above. Them learning how to pace that has been very challenging for me to teach and coach, but we're getting there. I mean, they're learning it. But it's
hard for anyone.
Yeah, it's difficult to like understand that, but it's been a lot of fun training them. I mean, I absolutely loved it, enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing it more in the future.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
But let's talk about Lazar. Again, so sad that an athlete had to pass away in the CrossFit Games. And so I used to be, both of us, we used to be more into CrossFit, right? Like,
it's been a while. Gym for a while.
Yeah, like we've been there. Like, and so that's why I think there's some level of like, I used to watch the CrossFit Games. I've done a couple of CrossFit competitions. I've competed in the Open. And so, but then like I stopped. It's been a long time since I stopped all that. But when I saw people start posting on social media that this guy had passed away, Lazar, I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? And then what's even worse is like they have videos of it online. I don't know if you've seen any of those, Joe, but it actually shows him like struggling in the water and like bobbing up and down. And the person on the paddleboard, who's supposed to be a lifeguard, is such a fan of CrossFit. They're just trying to see who's winning the race because Lazar was probably like in 4th or 5th place. But they want to see who's coming out of the water. So they're being a spectator and not a lifeguard. And they're looking out, they're looking at who's winning, and then he just goes under, and then it's over, right? So a myriad of failures, but we could blame that, like the lifeguard, lack of lifeguards, the lifeguard to athlete ratio, all those things. But I just looked at it from a programming standpoint. And that's what I wanted to bring up first, how ridiculous this was. And people talk about, hey, there's always a swim at the CrossFit Games. He was a water polo athlete, like all this crap. I don't care about any of that. I don't know why anybody's trying to make those kind of excuses. Like, social media is a terrible place at times, but none of that is relevant because what the event was a 3.5-mile run followed by 800-meter swim. 3.5 miles all out. None of them are running none of them are jogging, right? None of them are like, oh, let me hit zone 2, zone 3. They're going as fast as they can. And then they're hopping in the water. So I want to go over kind of event history real quick. Because for anyone who's like, hey, they swim, what happened? 2011, they did a swim run. So the athletes completed a 200-meter ocean swim followed by a 1,500-meter soft sand run. Then they did some other stuff, but it was swim, run. 2012, I'm not going to read every single thing that they did, but 2012 was they did a swim, then they did a bike, then they did a run. 2013, there was a pool swim. 2014, there was a short swim, followed by some CrossFit work, and then a short swim. And when I say short swim, let's see, it was 250-yard swim at the end of doing a little bit of CrossFit work. So not an all-out 3.5-mile max aerobic threshold test, just a little bit of CrossFit work and then a short swim. 2015, they did swim, work, swim again. This time it was a 500-meter swim. Then they did a 2-mile paddle, like on a paddle board, and then a 500-meter swim. 2016, they just had a straightforward ocean swim of 500 meters. And then 2017 was the first year they did something similar to they did to this year, 2024. And they did a 1.5-mile run, a 500-meter lake swim, followed by a 1.5-mile run. So 1.5-mile all-out run. And then I found this video of Chris Hinshaw, who's like the top aerobic coach for CrossFitters. He was on Mark Bell's Power Project. And they talk about how Matt Fraser almost died in 2017 when they did this competition. He was like drowning, and I think it was Brent Fikowski who saved him, like pulled him up and like literally saved his life during the swim. So you already see like, hey, when you combine this max aerobic threshold, but we both know from running 1.5 miles in the Air Force, could you imagine going as fast as you possibly can and then hopping in the water right after that? So that was like red alert. Like you guys almost screwed up, right?
And then Matt Fraser won it, what, 3 years in a row or something?
Yeah, he's the fittest one there, right? Like, anyway, 2018, they did a swim, run. And then 2019, they did a swim, paddle. 2020, they did swim, CrossFit stuff. 2021, same thing, swim, CrossFit stuff. And then 2022, they just did a short swim. 2023, there was no swim. And then 2024, they were like, what the hell? Let's make it the hardest we possibly could, double the distance, and then add some more for the most we've ever done with a run. And let's put it before a swim. So this is the worst programmed event I've ever seen in history. And people compare it to triathlons. So triathletes die every single year in the water. Some of them die of cardiac arrest on the run because it's a very demanding 16, 17, or 14 to 17-hour event, whatever it is, for finishers. And people die every single year in triathlons. Well, there's like somewhere between 2 million and 4 million competitors worldwide of triathletes in just triathlons, right? That's a lot. And there's about like 5 people who die per year in triathlons across, let's just call it 2 million. 5 out of 2 million. And again, I don't think any death is acceptable, but some of these deaths are legitimate, like cardiac arrest at the marathon at the very end, right? Like things that can happen to people like that you just never knew. Some people do drown. That's very possible as well. There's 79 competitors in this competition, and one of them died. Like these statistics are nowhere close to the same. So anyone trying to compare that is silly. And at the same time, like it's just such bad programming. So now if I kind of like laid the groundwork here for this, there's also another post I want to read from Brent Fikowski that really highlights how stupid CrossFit is. But here's the deal, guys. I talked about this in the High Rocks podcast, and I just kind of mentioned my respect for CrossFit Games athletes. Like they are legit. Like I might talk poorly about CrossFit sometimes, but I talk poorly about CrossFit for people who are like listening to this podcast, like somebody who only has an hour a day to train and all they're doing is hitting a hard Metcon every day. And maybe your gym or your box programs it better or something like that. But that's typically what I don't like. I don't think the methodology is amazing. But what CrossFit Games athletes do is completely different. They're training all these different modalities. They are dedicating their entire lives to the sport because you have to be able to be that fit and compete at this level. They are some of the most legit, athletic, fit human beings on the face of this earth. And I will not thwart that. I will not say that that's not true. Okay. So like, I'm not talking trash about CrossFit Games competitors. They are amazing, amazing human beings. My biggest problem has always and forever been the CrossFit Games and CrossFit HQ. They are the worst. Like, this is the silliest, dumbest thing on the planet. So Dave Castro, if you don't know, he is a former Navy SEAL, and he programs all the games workouts. And he thinks it's like funny to see what he can get athletes to do, right? Like, he treats it like buds. And I get it. Like, if you're training Navy SEALs, granted, the average Navy SEAL trainee is probably 19 to 20 years old, just so we're all like, they're rubber bands, right? You could do anything to these people and they will be fine. Like, they're not 28 years old like Lazar. And I'm not saying he's old by any means, but I'm just saying there's a difference of like training 19 to 22-year-olds in buds versus trying to have a legitimate fitness competition for the fittest on earth. But he's very much in this buds mentality of like, where all those things are fine, where it's like, yeah, they just ran 15 miles with a boat on their head. Maybe we should have them do it again. Yeah, cool. For our nation's warriors, F with them, screw with them, put them through the hardest tests you could ever think of. I don't care if there's any structure. I don't care about any of that, because I get what you're trying to do in buds. You're trying to weed people out, see how fit they are, see what kind of grit they have for some of the toughest missions that they'll face on the planet. That has no place in the CrossFit Games. And unfortunately, they had to learn that through an athlete passing away. But anyway, we can unpack all this a little bit more. But Joe, what are your thoughts, man? And I'm sorry, I've been just ranting here for like 10 minutes.
I mean, it's always been that when we were talking about the programming, and I've always thought it was crazy the amount of events that go into the CrossFit Games. And one of my first thoughts was like, why do you need 11 to 13 events across 3 days to figure out who's the fittest? Why couldn't it be like you couldn't do this across 6 to 8 workouts?
Yeah.
And like, if like really, and what you're talking about is that you're like with the buds things, it's whoever can do, weeding people out, whoever can make it. And like the CrossFit, I thought it's supposed to be to find out who is the fittest, but not who's the most resilient or fortitude or
Right.
just surviving. Like, that's not what I feel like it should be.
Yeah, like
And
I'm surprised they haven't like thrown in like a rifle competition. Like, let's shoot a target. Like, why?
sleep
Like,
deprivation.
yeah. Like, let's wake them up at 1 a.m. even though we thought they were going to be competing at 6. Like, all this stupid stuff. Like Dave would do too. I bet people have stopped him from doing like stuff like that.
Yeah, and like just thinking about, because the Olympics were just on. Like the track athletes and the swimmers, they go and compete in multiple events there to figure out who's the best in the world. But they have like days in between their events, and it's like their one event, they do it, and then they have some rest. Maybe if they're part of a relay team, they go back to back days, but not in the same day, because they're there to put out 110%. And I feel like if you trim this down from 11, plus, 1 year I think they had 13 or 14 workouts, down to 6 or 8. Each of those workouts, everybody is going to be able to give a higher percentage, and they're also going to be able to recover more. And you might even like have to think about like, okay, all we have to do is test the right things. Get your aerobic ones, get your anaerobic, get this strength, get this endurance. Hit the marks, and not just let's just throw some crap at the wall and make people do things because we can. So like the structure of it, I think is one of the things that I is kind of crazy to me and should change, because you just don't need that much. It will come back to Dave, which I have more to say about him. So yeah, I think it needs to just lessen the workouts and makes them actually have more of a purpose and not gimmicky.
Yeah, like that's the thing is, so many things bothered me about that event, because one, it was here. It was in Fort Worth. So like I'm a short drive away from Fort Worth. That was a stupid day, just so everyone's aware. It was 103 degrees here that day. And I know they did it early in the morning, so it wasn't as hot, but the water was probably warmer than it should have been. Like Texas lakes, especially like that one, they're not super fun to get into mid-August. That's not like ooh, this is chilly. You won't ever say that getting into a Texas body of water, at least in this area. And then at the same time, 3.5 mile run, 800 meter swim had everything to do with just like what was available. Like Dave was probably like, oh, well, this is this loop that I picked is 3.5 miles. Like when we run 1.5 miles in the Air Force PT test, there is a reason for it. We do that because there's a lot of science and research that says 1.5 mile run is indicative of a high VO2 max, or there's a large correlation between being fast at the 1.5 mile run and having high levels of VO2 max. That's ultimately what they're trying to test. And you see how like there's at least a little bit of thought behind that. The Army changed their fitness test. They still run 2 miles, but like the Army, was it combat fitness test or whatever they have now, where they have like, they do a broad jump and they do a carry and they do a medicine ball throw. And they selected all these events based off of it being indicative of the job performance, like how people would perform in what the more recent combat scene was for the Army. And we could get into all the military. The Marines do what the Marines do because they're crazy. They run 3 miles. They just like, oh, Air Force runs 1.5. We'll do double that. Or it was the Air Force who was like, you guys run 3, we'll run half of that. I don't know. But the Marines, they have their legitimate tests, like, and they also serve a purpose, is my point. And there's no purpose in that. There's so much better ways to test aerobic endurance with people not even having to hop into a pool. Like if you want to have swimming as part of it, fine. That's fine. But 3.5 mile run plus an 800 meter swim, like I just don't think that their programming actually is very good. It doesn't actually test things how they want it to. And that's what bothers me about CrossFit HQ in CrossFit Games is Dave Castro has been the biggest limiter to them being taken seriously, and they don't even realize it because they have this such an FU, it's us against them mentality, because everyone kind of shit on CrossFit from the get-go because of kipping pull-ups. Let's be real. That's the main thing, is like no one liked kipping pull-ups. Everyone made fun of CrossFit. And so that gave this culture of like, screw all of you, we're CrossFit, we'll do things how we want. But like CrossFit, like I could see that being like almost an addition to track and field at the Olympics, like another event like that. Like I feel like that's how capable these athletes are, that they could have a place in the Olympics. Now that's probably 20, 30 years away, but it'll never happen. 0% chance of happening if CrossFit just continues down this path, which I'm hoping that they're kind of done, in all honesty, because if you think about it, functional fitness doesn't need CrossFit HQ. We don't need the CrossFit Games. We don't need the Open. Like, we should take functional fitness away from them. Be like, hey, thanks for the introduction, but time for you guys to go. Like, we just don't really need you as a company anymore. We don't need the company. The fitness methodology is here. People train how they train. Let's set up a new body, new organization for these things and make them safer and make them more legitimate tests that have like some scientific research or backing on why the events were selected, and not just because they're hard. All these kind of things. Like it's just not military training. There was a part of me who used to kind of agree with Dave Castro of like, yeah, let's just make it hard. But I realized the only part of me that agreed with that was the military side of me. The military side of me who's trained, who's been the director of training and been a unit fitness program manager and physical training leader, to where it's like, sometimes I just need to make things hard to make them hard, because I know what you're going to go experience is harder than what we're doing right now. And so that side of me has agreed with him. But the more I look at CrossFit Games competitors as just like legitimate professional athletes who are just kind of getting shit on by Dave Castro, the more I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like it needs to change, because they didn't sign up to defend our country and truly not know what they'll face if they were to go to war. Like that's why we train our soldiers, how we train them, and our airmen and our sailors and everything. But like, it doesn't make any sense for CrossFit. It doesn't make any sense to be a CrossFit Games competitor and not know anything about what you're about to face.
Yeah. I remember when I was in the CrossFit and at the gyms, even the gym people, like we were not a fan of Dave Castro. I just feel like I feel like he's made it too much about himself. Like he has too much of a showmanship. Like he wants it to be, there's too much theatrics to it versus the actual fitness. And that's why I had the issue of like, okay, it's way too many workouts. Cut the workouts in half, because you're actually testing the fitness of the workouts and not just putting on a show. And like his reveals for the open workouts are always super stupid. They don't make any sense, but he just gets a kick out of it. He always, wants to be center stage. And I think that's definitely a huge issue for me. And just like I'm surprised he didn't go when Greg Glassman was
He
basically kicked
did, and
out.
I think they brought him back. Like I think when Greg Glassman kind of got removed, yeah, they brought him back. I think they just brought him back. And I was talking to some other people about this, and it's like, why? Like, have you ever heard of USA Triathlon? They're like the
Yes.
governing body for triathlons in the USA. You know anybody there? You ever heard any controversy coming out or like like no, right? And that's how it should be. It's like, what's USA Triathlon? It's like, oh, it's the thing I sign up for, but if I need to go run a triathlon, they keep things safe, they keep the events going. They're kind of the governing body, but shit, I don't know anything about them. I couldn't name one person who works there, right? And that's how it should be. No one should know Dave Castro. This is not something like we shouldn't have a personality attached to these things. They should just be a governing body, keeps things safe, runs legitimate events. But for some reason, we know. And the whole time CrossFit's ever been around, just everything has been controversial. Everything with them has been controversial. And they thought that was cool, that was going to get them there, but they're dying. Like CrossFit's like literally dying. Like the company is slowly going away. They're getting taken over by things like High Rocks and like F45s, and like the company and the brand is going downhill. Like that counterculture thing, it's cool for a little while until you become mainstream, which they did for a while. If you become mainstream and you try to keep this asshole counterculture going on, now you just kind of are an asshole. You know, you're not the underdog anymore. You're the big dog just talking shit for no reason, and it's really annoying and like it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, they've just gone in this really weird direction. I mean, even I got attacked by two of their employees for writing the article "CrossFit will make you weaker." That was a really popular one. Like that's why you're here, right? Like that one, was that the original one that you read? And so I wrote that one, and their legitimate their two of their employees started attacking me, like on Twitter, via email, comments on the blog, just attacking me for having written that. And that was the CrossFit culture. Some like no-name blogger, Jerred Moon, who was just getting his start, and they're just like trying to take me apart and take me down just because I wrote. And if you read the article, it's not like really controversial. It's like basically like, hey, here's a proposed way to train strength if you want to still do CrossFit. And it legitimately made me weaker when I only did it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's all I was trying to say. And anyway, it's just such a weird culture that they've created over there. And I think they should be done.
I think the only thing keeping it afloat are the pockets of communities that people join, and they're like religious to their pocket of community. But like you notice when Glassman left, and so many gyms dropped the CrossFit name so that they're not paying the royalties anymore, or paying the whatever licensing fee to use CrossFit. Those communities didn't go anywhere. You're still working out with the same people.
Yeah.
It's just, whatever prepared fitness, gym now, it's a functional fitness gym versus a CrossFit gym. So, and like their coach certification model, like that was how they sort of got their start. But that's kind of terrible now too. Like who the heck is going to, like, I'm not going to redo another entire weekend just to take the easiest test that I could take. So they're like, instead of paying like $200 to do the a retest, it's like $1,500 for the weekend course camp. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And no, I don't think anybody's going to be doing that, because that certification, all that does is allow you to coach a CrossFit class. So there's like no motivation to have that.
And I think they've lost, like, I think they're losing that battle too. Because like someone tells me they're CrossFit level 2 or 3, and I'm like, I'm not impressed. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm just like, I don't see a ton of value in that. Like CrossFit, and that's CrossFit's fault. I'm not saying the coach is like uneducated or they don't know something. But if you came to me, like say you wanted to work for me and you're like, hey, I want to be one of your programmers, I'm CrossFit level 3, I'd be like, I don't know. Like I don't know anything about what you know, like, because it's inconsistent. I don't think the verification process is very good. And they have to do a lot of those things, but I would hire someone with an NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association certification, like CSCS or TSAC-F, something. I'd hire them in a heartbeat over someone with CrossFit level 3. And that's because there's just more like science and like textbook work behind those kind of certifications than CrossFit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't, my only point is they're not doing themselves any favor. And I feel bad for all the people who've been fully bought into it. And like the company is just getting worse and worse. And like you wrapped your identity around it. You're right. You can go do functional fitness with your friends and it doesn't have to have the CrossFit tag to it. Right. Or you can get certifications in fitness and strength and conditioning without it having to be through CrossFit. There are other ways to do that. So yeah, I think that they're heading in a poor direction.
Yeah, well, I think they could still survive. I think they need to completely change their entire model of things. I don't, the even when I was doing it, the there's not really the open workouts are kind of terrible for regionals at games. Like the open workouts are designed so that everybody can participate. Well, they're not indicative of what's going to happen at regionals and the like. So I know when there were like there's times where you have these small guy cardio kings who can crush the open workouts and they qualify for regionals and then
they make it super
they
heavy.
get to regionals. Yeah, they get super. They just get like moderately heavy weights and they can't even complete the workouts. So like there's no correlation that there's that needs to change as well. Like there are like you have scaling standards for the open workouts. So don't worry about including too many people there, and I don't know what specifically they could do to change that, but I think that needs to. I think one year they changed the timing of the year for it. I don't think it lasted very long, but they might need to go to like a seasons sort of model to where maybe competitors like these top competitors compete in a couple of different events across a couple of months, and then that adds up to a point system to like a final showdown. But it's like 3 or 4 workouts on a weekend once a month, and then the final one is also 4 or 5 workouts, but not 12 to 13 workouts in like once a year. So I think the whole model could change. They could still salvage it and make it more open to, just definitely a change in the structure for how they do their year out competition and seasons.
Well, and change in leadership, right? Like obviously Glassman leaving didn't help that much. But what I'm surprised, and who knows if something will change by the time this is published, but someone needs to be fired or resign. And I'm not all about that like cancel culture. Like I'm not that guy. But whether it's actually your fault or not, like that's ownership, right? That's extreme ownership. Like if we hosted a Garage Gym Athlete event and someone died, I feel like I'd have to resign or like close up shop or something, right? Like I just feel like that was on me. Like even if it wasn't 100% my fault. And I'm surprised. Oh, I'm not actually surprised it hasn't happened, but I just feel like it should. And again, I'm not trying to like be the cancel culture guy. But like just here's an example. When I was in the military, this is like right after I got in, and I don't remember all the details. But and this is not classified. A B-2 bomber flew with nukes across our country. Live nukes.
Why not?
Yeah, they flew across the country with live nukes. Most of the U.S. did not even know that this happened. They took off. I don't remember where, but across. But I don't know where they went somewhere. It was like they went somewhere and like landed somewhere else. And they had live nukes on board. They took off uneventful, landed safely, and then the shitstorm that happened after that, like how many people were fired because of that was like, okay, the base commander fired, the squadron commander fired, the higher up, like all the way up to like the 3 or 4 star general fired. Like they just fired everybody in succession. I think some of them may have even resigned. And I was confused back then as like a 22-year-old. And I was like, why? Like they obviously the 3-star general had no idea bombs are being loaded onto this airplane and flying across the country. And I remember talking to my dad about it. And this was before Jocko ever wrote his book, Extreme Ownership, which by the way has been a thing in the military before Jocko decided it was a thing. Like it's always, ownership has been a thing. And that's what my dad explained to me. He's like, doesn't matter. Like it happened under his watch. It's his responsibility. There's some sort of lack of discipline, lack of procedure. Something happened in that chain of command to where he effed up. And so my dad just was in complete agreement with every single person getting fired that got fired. And so for me, like, this is the same story. I don't care. It doesn't matter if Lazar, like, I'm sure, like, maybe an autopsy comes out, maybe he had a heart attack. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The event was poorly programmed. Well, it's the lifeguard's fault. The lifeguard wasn't paying attention. Doesn't matter. You should have had more lifeguards. You should have had lifeguards that paid attention. Like, fired. Dave Castro, fired. CEO, resigned, fired. And again, I'm not trying to cancel these people. I'm just surprised something like that hasn't happened yet. Like, it should have already happened, in my opinion. Or the CEO just stepping down, putting someone else in place. And again, I'm not the cancel culture type of guy. I'm just surprised there's been no ownership other than, like, yeah, he died. That was really unfortunate. Like, I've been, like, checking every day this week. I'm like, is anything coming from this? Like, just think about also that Lazar's family. Like, they traveled from Serbia to be here. And just imagine you going to a different country. And, like, I mean, you're in a different country right now, but imagine your family goes to Spain to compete and Joe dies. Your wife would probably be sitting around like, I don't know the rules here. I don't know the laws. Like, I'm just going to try and keep my mouth shut until I get back to America and I can start dealing. Like, I feel like that's what his family was doing. That's why they're not, like, outraged yet, because they're in a different country. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know, like, how to handle the situation. If an American had died, this would already be way bigger. And I'm not saying it's not a big deal. I'm just saying, like, if I went and competed at the CrossFit Games and I died, my family would already be, like, lawyered up and, like, suing the hell out of these people. And, like, it'd be a big deal, in my opinion. I think that's what would happen. My family's not even, like, super legal action taking people. I just think that's what would happen if it happened in America.
I'm also not a fan of the cancel culture thing and thinks that somebody's head should roll. But I do think it's time for Castro to be gone. And I also say that because he'll land on his feet with something else, something on the side, because it's not like he did the same thing that, like, Glassman got torn down for. Castro has enough of a following. He has this podcast now that he's been doing. So, like, in his ranch, so, like, he'll have enough of a following to land on his feet.
For sure.
But I just don't think I think he needs to separate from CrossFit in order for it to actually survive. And, like, why, like, and just going back to the game and the logic of it, like, that the CrossFit is testing fitness. You're testing who's the most fit through workouts. You can do the swims in a pool. You can do all these things in a controlled environment. It's not like a triathlon and they're not swimming all that far. I think one of the reasons why the open swim for all these, like, Ironman's triathlons, because they're swimming a mile. How many freaking laps are you going to do in the pool? It would just be miserable. So it's just a workout, treat it like a workout and having the controlled environment and just drop the gimmickiness of it and the showmanship, and people will still watch, and people watch the Olympics. It's just doing a quick race.
Yeah. All right, I think we've hammered this home. I will say, just as I've done this one time, this was 2016 or 2017. You remember the first house I lived in Texas? I lived pretty close to a lake. Ben, my buddy, used to come over all the time. We used to do crazy shit. I mean, that's how Meet Yourself Saturday was started before it was Meet Yourself Saturday. It's like he'd come over on Saturdays. It wasn't always Murph at the time. We would just come up with some, honestly, wild crap, like the hardest things that we could think of in the middle of summer, and we would do them. And only one time ever did we attempt an all-out run into a swim, because I lived at this lake. But I had this idea because there was this small channel in the lake, and I don't know how far it was. If I had to estimate, probably 300, 400 meters, something like that. It's also hard to judge water, right? So it could have been further. And it was about just over 2 miles away from my house. And so Ben and I ran, let's say 2.1 miles, all out, and then we got in the water. Ben and I both swam about 20 meters, and without even looking at each other, both turned around and came back to shore, because we were like, holy shit, like, I think we're going to die. Like, we honestly thought that. That's the only time I've ever done a max effort run to a swim in a Texas lake. Very similar to exactly what happened. So I'm surprised more people, and again, they're way better shape than I ever have been or will be. But I was just the one time I've ever done almost exactly what they're doing. I quit. Like I turned around. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't think I'll make it to the other end. And we had no lifeguards, obviously, or anything like that. But it's just crazy. And again, with the heat in Texas and everything else, it's just insanity. But what I wanted to end with was reading Brent Fikowski. So he's a nine-time CrossFit Games athlete. He's finished second. He's finished third. He's pretty legit competitor. He's also like, they call him the professor because he's very like, smart and like formulaic about how he does things. I'm going to read his latest Instagram post he posted yesterday, and then it's going to take me a little bit to read because it's long. But I just want to see everyone know, like, hey, this isn't just our opinion. This guy is super bought into CrossFit, 9-time CrossFit Games competitor. And here's what he had to say. The weekend is over, and I miss my friend Lazar. Since 2020, I've done what I can to professionalize and improve the sport of CrossFit. With the support of others, we have set up the Professional Fitness Athletes Association, PFAA, and petitioned CrossFit on behalf of athletes to create a fairer playing field, standardize movements, and more than anything, promote athlete safety. When we propose constructive feedback, the sentiment we're left with is, don't worry, we got this, just trust us. We have a better understanding of this than you do. He's talking about when he talks to CrossFit HQ. The problem is no one on their team has competed or coached in this sport at a high level. Also, they won't let athletes be involved in the process because everything they do has to be shrouded in mystery. Pat, Tia, Cole, Fee, Annie, Lazar, Luca, Chandler, Laverne, Deanna, Victoria, Royce, myself, and many other athletes and coaches these past 4 years have been willing to volunteer our time with the PFAA to lend our experience to help the sport improve. And one by one, we've all lost interest because there has been no reciprocity. Whilst I know that CrossFit does not aim to hurt anybody, when they say safety is our number one priority, I simply have not believed this to be true for a long time. I believe their top priority has always been their subjective definition of the test and the creative freedom they wish to exert when inventing these workouts. Athlete safety comes at best a paltry second, and this past weekend, that strategy went terribly wrong with the most tragic of consequences. I never thought it would be something as bad as one of our friends drowning in a lake. I'll be honest, I was worried about avoiding many of the same safety issues we've tried to solve in the past. A knee injury caused by he's talking about injuries he's gotten just competing in the games. A knee injury caused by doing a max back squat on a wet wooden platform in the rain. An injury from landing on a coiled climbing rope. Achilles injuries from rebounding box jumps. 36 out of 320 men experiencing pectoral tears in 3 consecutive weeks of regionals with no programming alterations, or illness from E. coli bacteria in a lake. All that crap that he's gotten as being a competitor at CrossFit Games. And just like sidestepping here, me as a coach, things that I've seen when events or even drills are poorly run. My son, William, broke his nose and had to get surgically repaired in flag football 2 years ago because the coaches ran a stupid drill. It was a stupid drill. They ran crossing routes. Anyway, I won't get all heated and fired up about that, but it had nothing to do with the sport of football. It had to do with idiot coaches. And then same thing, I saw a kid break his ankle in soccer drills. They were just doing like wind sprints, but they didn't spread the line out long enough. So like everyone was right next to each other, almost shoulder to shoulder, doing these suicides back and forth, right? And you're too close to somebody, you try to plant your foot on someone else's ankle, broken. So it's a big deal how events are run. Like, and you learn these things. You know where you learn it? The NSCA. Like they even tell you how far barbells need to be away from plates and like very little things that you think are stupid, but like all these little things are very important. But I'll get back to the rest of his post. It's a pattern of behavior. It's their repeated attitude to our concerns. We try to provide feedback. They don't listen. To provide clear, unambiguous evidence of this, let me set out in detail how we as the PFAA tried to get more clarity on the heat in the Texas for this year's CrossFit Games. September 2023, Fort Worth, Texas has announced the location of the 2024 CrossFit Games. On a non-CrossFit Incorporated podcast, Dave Castro states that 95% of the events will be indoors. December 2023, PFAA emails CrossFit. Athletes will have to decide whether or not they pay a large amount of money to prepare by training in the heat to create the necessary physiological adaptation for this year's games. We are unclear if this is necessary, given some things we've heard regarding most of the tests being performed in an air-conditioned arena. However, the risk of being unprepared for the heat and performing outdoors is frightening. Ideally, we would like a commitment on the number of events to be held outdoors, their duration, and the time of day they are to be performed. CrossFit's answer: we are not releasing event details at this time, but we assure you that the athlete safety is our number one priority when considering something that got cut off. March, April 2024, PFAA sends CrossFit a 2-page document reiterating December's concern in more detail and providing simple language they could use to give athletes enough detail to know how to acclimatize safely without divulging secrets of the workouts. CrossFit's answer: a much smaller percentage of events than Madison will occur outdoors. We, the PFAA, distribute our document in their response via email, website, and Instagram. We then learned that CrossFit didn't like how we communicated their response. Dave Castro almost immediately divulges more valuable information on YouTube about the number of off-site events. We've tried to communicate professionally, and this is what we're met with. To me, this is a typical indication of CrossFit's lack of professionalism and interest in collaborating on safety concerns. I kept thinking, is that the best you can do for the athletes? This is the absolute simplest request. We're not even asking you to keep us out of the heat. We're just asking, please tell us how often and for how long we will be in the heat. Let the athletes living in cooler climates know how they need to prepare. Is this secrecy of your workouts more important than increasing the ability of an athlete to prepare for the heat safely? During this time, I saw people online poking fun at athletes' concerns about the heat, like it's a joke. Did people forget about Kara performing Murph in 2014, which I don't remember? Maybe she had like a heat stress event. I remember Murph being hot back in the day, 2014.
People got rhabdo, I think. I thought one of the Icelandic women got rhabdo or something too another year. Like,
okay.
And these were like winners, like had won in the past.
And I remember it was like it was in California, and there was a heat wave, and it was like, I think it was like 95 or something, but probably hotter on the stadium floor. And anyway, athletes need this information so they can prepare themselves to compete safely. I plan to play a leadership role via the PFAA to keep pushing for change in a sport I know can be so much better in every way, even if my love of competing has dimmed. Every year, my trust in the CrossFit Games staff's ability to run an effective competition erodes more and more. It's not a secret that many competing athletes resent that organization. Then, every so often, when things seem to get too bad, we're asked to bury the hatchet and come back to the table to collaborate. With the death of Lazar, the trust is gone. We need change, and I, with my colleagues at the PFAA, hope to lead the way on behalf of all athletes, past, present, and future, to prevent something like this from happening again in a sport we love. Lazar is dead. Nothing will bring him back. That's it. So you can tell, like, we're not the only ones who are like, this is stupid. You guys need to do something. And I hope, again, this is my small part of the world and community platform. And if you didn't care about CrossFit at all, don't worry, we won't be talking about it, pretty much ever again. I don't think we have anything to talk about with CrossFit now. Like, it's just, they should be gone and done away with. But anyway,
shouldn't be hard to replace. Honestly, you can still take the same fitness, just use a different name, use a different. I mean, the grid games, the grid competitions they had for a little while, it was like an arena style. Those I think would be even better nowadays. You have like a team of 5, they do a couple of different things, and like that's that.
Yeah, I don't know how, but maybe nothing happens from this. Like, I just don't. That's what's been so surprising. I know it's only a few days after the weekend, but I'm sure that they signed some concrete legal waiver when you compete at CrossFit Games that if you die, it's like there's no liability, But I think there's a ton of negligence in that. But no one's been fired, no one's stepped down, nothing's come from any investigation or it's just been crazy. I hope something changes by the time this podcast is published, but I don't know if it will be.
It's going to come down to the retention of the affiliates, how many people retain their membership and that name, because a lot of them still haven't taken it back up ever since the Glassman fiasco. So I think they're going to lose a lot more here. And if all it takes is X people that like where you just read to start up something in the a similar space as a competitor, and boom,
People have been trying to do this for a
ship.
while. Like someone I interviewed on the Better Humanology podcast back in the day, who I have a lot of respect for, James Fitzgerald from OPEX. He's, he was one of the first CrossFit Games competitors, maybe the first winner, I think in 2007 or something like that. The first ever. And he's super smart dude. But like, I think he was a part of starting, it's called like the International Fitness Federation or something. And I just none of these other things have like gained any traction. But their whole goal, if I understood it correctly, was to get the sport of fitness into the Olympics. And these are the kind of things we need. We need professional organizations that you don't know who's in the organization. To my point earlier in USA Triathlon, we don't need theatrics. We don't need any of that. And I say all this as someone who, like, my time is past. I just want to exercise, do some fun things. But maybe my kids want to be part of something like this, and I'll steer them away from CrossFit HQ my whole life. You guys do not become a part of any of this. Functional fitness, that's fine, but don't associate with this company. Don't compete in their competitions. Just stay away from it. But what if my kids are really fit and they want to do something that's not like a sport? What if they want to do sport of fitness? I want them to have a place to do that. I really hope that something can come from this. So again, all the athletes, thank you so much for listening. Big takeaways here, other than our opinions of CrossFit, is, Lazar did pass away in a very unfortunate event. If you think his family deserves anything, they do have a GoFundMe. GoRuck is also doing some stuff to where I think you find on their website, to where they're donating 100% of their proceeds from some certain sale to send it to Lazar's family. So there are a lot of ways that you want to support if you do want to support. That's a big reason I was doing this podcast in general. But then, secondary, just like, hey, as a fitness community, we deserve better. Everyone deserves better, and we can do better. And this is not it. But that's it for this one. If anyone wants to be a part of Garage Gym Athlete, we'd love to have you for a free trial. And for all of our athletes out there, stay safe and stay committed. But remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.